So I've recently redone my land cover based on several factors relevant to my planet. Here, I plan on sharing with you my process for mapping out land cover via latitude belts. First, we talk about how that works. Then, we explore biomes and what that means to your players. It's gonna be a good one. So a lot of DMs kind of skip over nature, myself included, but when players can't fast travel or teleport, adding variation in land cover and wildlife makes for a fun way to set a scene. So the first thing you need to consider is the size of your world relative to Earth. You see, Earth has climate belts at latitudes that provide consistent temperature and ground cover based on the amount of sunlight hitting the area for the duration of the year. We have the equator at 0 degrees within 23.5 on either side of that. We call it the torrid zone, or the tropics. This is delineated by the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn and takes up approximately 39% of the Earth's surface. From there we have the subtropics, or the north and south temperate zones. These span from 23.5 to 66.5 north and south degrees respectively. Combined, these are 52% of the Earth's surface. So 39 plus 52 equals 91, and the remaining approximately 9% is divided up between the north and south frigid zones, which we would call the poles, and combined this is obviously 100% of Earth's land cover distribution. Looking at this, we get an idea of how the exposure to sunlight affects the land. This only determines average temperature, but this does lead to melanin production in humans, varying degrees of biodiversity, or rather the amount of species per mile, and also describing the vegetation to your players as it varies. So how large is your planet? Making a planet the same as Earth is an easy solution. My world, Arcalia, is roughly half of Earth's size, meaning its climate belts are proportionately smaller. You don't need an entire world map to do this, just an idea of where your continent lies on its planet's latitude belts. It doesn't have to be this invested, but mine is because we're gold star world builders. So even though our planet is half the size of Earth, it is still a sphere with the same number of degrees. So what we need to do is find out how many miles 1 degree equals so we can accurately portion out our climate belts. In order to do that, we measure this 0 to 30 degree line as about 2,000 miles. We divide that by 30 and end up with about 66 miles per degree. From here, it's just a matter of multiplying the number of degrees the climate belt spans by the number of miles per degree. In this case, 23.5 times 66. And then we just sort of portion out with the line tool and draw from there. To determine the amount of degrees the temperate latitude belt occupies, it ends at 66.5, so if we subtract 23 from that, we have the remaining number of degrees that's occupied by the middle latitude belt. We multiply 43 by 66.6 and we get our result for how much this should span. Then we just draw it in. It's pretty sick. You only need to delineate these two zones of north and south, because now the poles just took care of themselves. Temperature will affect everything. I mean, look at Earth. Places that can grow crops year-round will be more prosperous. The equator isn't necessarily known for its fortune in terms of resource, and so better farmland may exist more around the subtropics like on Earth. Food production and available biomass are probably two of the most important factors that underpin a civilization's success. But just because they get more sunlight doesn't necessarily mean they have more resources. I assume that would be the case, but according to this paper, it's actually really not been empirically tested and seems to be a hot topic of debate, leaning towards the equator is not technically more fortunate. And then there's the matter of disease. Insects and breeding year-round is a pretty potent vector for spreading viruses from point A to B, and on the equator there's just a lot more of that going on, because the other latitudes, the more temperate zones have pronounced seasons, therefore the bugs die off and they're not just breeding and living all of the days of the year. Again, not that it's super important, but if you're gonna go this far, some hot tips! More species diversity means larger fauna with more trophic levels, so more dangerous predators in the jungle than in the broadleaf deciduous forests. Likewise, more venomous plants, more like toxic animals in general, I think exist in the torrid zone, as it were. You can also do the same for adding monsters, so you know, jungle monsters, subtropical monsters, and ice monsters, and you know, that's a pretty diverse cast and crew. Jungles, like I said, they should have poisonous stuff, and likewise in hot areas, players consume 1.5 to double the amount of water due to the overall temperature increase. The same goes for horses. You know, sunburns, they exist. Frostbite, it exists. Make sure your players outfit themselves before facing the cold, harsh world. It's good flavor text, and I think it kind of creates an entertaining module. Also, the position and latitude affects the length of the day. The equator has some of the longest days, and likewise, the north some of the shortest. Empires in these regions should have resources dictated by the surrounding land cover. If you watch the cities video, you know empires in these regions have resources dictated by the surrounding land cover, which is dictated by the average temperature and other significantly more complicated factors that we're not going to address. This way, you could pick from a slew of factors and encounters familiar to you, the game master, in the biomes. Polar bears and ice giants in the north, plus frostbite, venomous snakes, jungle cats, and fever, in the south. You get it. That's pretty much it. I don't think this is the most important part of most games by a long shot, but I do think that these different elements that players have to deal with when they change places makes it feel like they've actually changed places. Now they have to worry about a fever or heat stroke instead of frostbite, and I think that it's kind of a fun thing for players and DMs to include and overcome. Alrighty, Rooney, toss me some subs. We're really close to 100, and I'm like changing my branding and stuff. We're really trying to get there, create a bot farm, have them sub to me. I need that good exposure. Whether this was helpful, meaningless, annoying, or simply mindless drivel to fill the void of a life yearning for more. Please, subscribe. It's my lifeblood. As always, thanks for watching, Internet. This has been Lizard with the Gold Star World Builders Club. Out. And if you don't believe me, believe Georgie Boy!